Havertz is not that guy. And
yeah, he's not always going to make something out of nothing.
I'm just waiting for Arsenal to go out and get someone who can change the game.
He's one of the best players in Europe right now, one of the best strikers. Look at how effective he is. 25 touches, 2 shots, 1 goal, and 1 assist. And what separates him is his pass accuracy as a number 9. You don't see that often, that a player at that center position is able to maintain possession so much, and he's so effective at it. He's totally the total package. And for me, he's the best 9 I would take over Erling Haaland right now.
Ooh, I like that, Lahoud. How does this match up against what you had to say yesterday? Look at Darian. Can we get that signal? She is just looking at him. She didn't break eye contact. She said, I said what I said.
I saw your segment. I took notes.
Where's my tea? Let me just get some tea in. I agree with you. I said right now, I said the same thing yesterday. I'm very much in agreement with you that right now, in terms of form, in terms of that sense of fear that he's putting in defenders, it's not too dissimilar to what Erling Haaland was doing at his best. And Erling Haaland's been doing it more consistently, obviously. But when you look at just the rut that Manchester City's in and the rise in form, I mean, this guy's scoring goals against Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal twice now. He's doing it in the biggest stages domestically for Newcastle. And now it's all about delivering silverware. That's the only thing that's missing to get him and this club into the spot in the limelight where they deserve to be. Going into that match, there was such a big difference between Alexander Isak and everyone else. He was the match winner, the difference maker. There was an aura about him that we see not too dissimilar from, you go back in the annals of Arsenal Football Club. There's that aura that maybe a Thierry Henry kind of had when he played for Arsenal. And I'm not saying he's Thierry right now, Chuck. I know you're going to come back at me. But he just had that swag to him. He had that change of pace. He just had that completeness that world-class strikers have on big stages.
For me, he has the best assets of a 10, a winger, and a 9. I think he's able to orchestrate, play in pockets, go 1v1. He picks out passes. You don't see a lot of number 9s have that ability to do it all at the same time. And I think he put some respect on his name this match.
Charlie, give it to us. What are your thoughts? You've been quiet. You've been quiet.
You've been too quiet.
Vacation
We've
mode,
been
Chuck.
going for 7 minutes.
We're not next to
I am calm, but I will say he is playing absolutely out of his mind this season. All right, he had 17 goals in 2020-2021 season when he played for Real Sociedad in La Liga. And I thought, okay, this is a young kid coming up with a lot of potential. You really hadn't seen, where his limit is yet. Obviously, in terms of his dribbling ability in the clip that Darian showed, he was very good at waiting for Saliba to dive in before evading him and moving into space. He's not going to outrun you with pace. He's not electric in that way, but he's very deceptive in the way that he can run because he has those long strides. I think his change of pace was very good in that play as well, so he's gotten better at that. But in terms of him being an out-and-out goal scorer, is he better than Erling Haaland? I'd say no, not yet.
But all-around player.
In terms of all-around player, it's debatable. I would rather still like to see, I don't think Erling Haaland is utilized in the way that he would be if he had played with Newcastle. And Isak would probably be the same way. He would have to change his game if he played with Manchester City. But for me, he does do some things better than Erling Haaland, but in the end, what you want your goal scorer to do is get on the end of crosses and finish, and Erling Haaland's a better finisher than Alexander Isak.
I think we're seeing why we even have this conversation about Isak is you go to the player that walked in from La Liga and Real Sociedad to the player that we're seeing now this season, and when he first came in the Premier League, he could score goals, blockbusters only. What he did against Liverpool, getting a ball, turning a world-class defender like Virgil van Dijk around, he was doing that. But then this season, his movement in the final third, look at this. He's always got his body positioning. His body positioning is one thing that I said yesterday, keep an eye on it in the clips I broke down, and it was on full display. Both of the goals he scores, he's always on the front foot. He's always anticipating, willing to make a gamble. And Chuck, I remember watching you play with the U.S. men's national team, and that was something you did so well in the Confederations Cup. Everyone looked at your speed, your physicality, but I always thought your body positioning when you were at your best was what improved most. And with top strikers like this, with a player that's ascending into being a top striker, his cleverness in moving in and around the box. I mean, the second goal, he gets in between 3 Arsenal players, you could argue 4, and his first touch is just so deft that it freezes the entire Arsenal back line. As a defender, as a midfielder, you ask questions, well, who's got him? Do I go to him? Is he got him?
Yeah.
And then he's willing to take the quick release. He's willing to gamble. He's willing to just take those quick snapshots. I mean, this guy's playing with all the confidence of the world right now, and there isn't a Premier League back line that can live with him right now because he's that good.
Alongside Isak, what's been a really big turning point, or what's really been another key for Newcastle's turning point here in these past couple games?
Well, I look at their midfield, and in terms of finally having a player who can kind of change the game. You brought in an incredible midfielder from Milan who you thought, okay, if we can have him for a full season and then the gambling thing happens, you think, okay, well, that kind of disrupts the harmony of this midfield and what you needed, a position that was needed to be fulfilled for this Newcastle side. But now it feels like you have a player who's playing at the top of his game. You brought him in, and he's doing all the dirty work, the runs out of midfield. For me, that's the difference, is when you have a player who is so committed on both sides of the ball, who puts out fires, but also makes those runs into the attacking phase of the game and can play those killer balls. I think that's where we're finally seeing Newcastle, because the midfield was probably the weakest point last season, and trying to juggle the Premier League and Champions League, and we saw them fall apart. Now it feels like they're back and they're playing the way that I think we all thought they could be playing.
Is this a way that, Darian, you think that they can continue playing this season? I mean, they've been unbeaten in, 7 straight wins, 5 clean sheets, scoring nearly 3 goals per game. Is that something that you think is attainable for them to keep going with?
Absolutely. They're playing against top teams. And as you guys know, when you have the confidence and you're actually getting results, you're scoring goals, tactically how they're set up in a 4-5-1, I think it builds a lot of confidence for them to go against big teams, have numbers up. Then you have a player like Isak that you can rely on. You know is going to be able to hold up possession for then you to get forward. I think they absolutely have the consistency. I think this is just another block in their confidence that's going to make them a top team in Europe.
But I also want to throw in, Arsenal had their chances.
Arsenal.
We'll get to that in a bit. I can't wait to get to that.
Let's not forget, Arsenal did have their chances. It wasn't like they completely played Arsenal off the park and didn't allow opportunities. Newcastle had Dubravka in goal, but when you have Sandro Tonali, I think the difference with him in the pitch is he has this tenacity that everyone feeds off of.
Yeah.
And you could see, okay, Isak, he's our goal scorer, but we needed somebody who's going to be putting out the fires, who is the strength and the heartbeat. And that's Tonali. And I think, but Newcastle have capitalized, but this was more of an Arsenal slip-up, I think, than Newcastle flexing.
You think with Saka?
If you had a scale of were Newcastle that good or were Arsenal that bad, I think it would be more in favor of Arsenal being
I think there's a world where both of those can be true, because I thought Newcastle, they were excellent. And
they were.
You highlight Sandro Tonali, and we'll get to the Arsenal perspective on this. They didn't even have Bruno Guimaraes, and their midfield played Arsenal off the park. Sandro Tonali being moved from a box-to-box midfielder to a defensive midfielder or deep-lying playmaker, it's given them one aspect and difference, is they have more legs in midfield. That's an aspect of his game that he's one of the fittest players you'll come across in the Premier League. Being able to cover grounds on both sides of the ball, initiate the press, just dictate the tempo of the game. I just thought Newcastle, their game plan, Eddie Howe, he showed a lot of guts to come in and press Arsenal for 45 minutes, get that first goal, and then survive late on. So I think there's a world where both of those can be true. I do see where you're coming from, though.
I want to hear more about that. I love when they put the two of you together. I know sparks are going to fly. You guys can't see it, but they go at each other. But we're going to talk more about the Arsenal side of things. But first, let's listen to what Mikel Arteta had to say after the game.
Mikel, obviously a disappointing night. Where do you think it went wrong for you tonight?
Well, when you look at what we produced in the game in relation to what they produced and the scoreline, obviously there's no reflection of that. That's normal, but they were very efficient. We had 23 shots, only 3 on targets. So then you make life difficult for yourself. That's the reality, but it's only half-time.
Simple as that? Not taking the chances that you did create?
Yeah, that's making it simple. We don't have an hour.
Smiling now, but how big a blow is that? You'll have to make history to get to the final now. No team has ever lost 2-0 at home and then got to the final.
It's half-time. Plenty to play. I feel that we were the better team in many aspects, but the reality is that we lost the game.
What do you think you could have done better tonight, other than, as we said, the finishing?
Yeah, but that's the main part. That's football. The difference, what they've done better is this part. They defended better their goal, and they scored 2 chances when they had very few shots.
What sort of moment would you say your team are in at the moment?
Well, we are in January in 4 competitions and trying as hard as we can, dealing with a lot of issues that we had, but the team is right up there every single game.
Do you feel concerned that you don't have the momentum that you had earlier on in the season?
No.
How do you look at this challenge then, to get through to the second leg?
It's not a challenge, it's another game in 3 days against Manchester United, different competition, so a beautiful one.
Thank you, Mikel.
Thank you.
The XG, and I'm not a big stats guy. I see the value in stats.
Yeah.
I've come a long way when it comes to stats because you can kind of twist and maneuver stats in any which way. You can finagle it and say, okay, this is why we're doing one thing versus another. But at the end of the day, the eye test and the stats test, they both showed that Arsenal need goal scorers. They need to go into the market and get a goal scorer. And I've been saying this, it feels like I've said this for years now. Kai Havertz is a serviceable player at the striker position. He's not a striker, but he's made the most of playing that position, right? If Arsenal were to go out and get another left winger that's dynamic and can create just like Bukayo Saka, then you don't necessarily need an out-and-out number 9 who's going to be banging in goals and do it on their own, because you have 2 creative playmakers. But Arsenal don't have that. And Arsenal, what we've been accustomed to seeing Arsenal back in the day, think of Thierry Henry days, you have strikers who can score, Bergkamp, Henry, Adebayor, Van Persie, whoever played up there. You had capable goal scorers. Kai Havertz is not that guy. And
yeah, he's not always going to make something out of nothing.
I'm just waiting for Arsenal to go out and get someone who can change the game.
Does that feel like a wish, though? Do you think that's realistic, that they will actually go get someone, or does that feel more like an unattainable goal to you?
At what point do you say, you know what? Now it's time to go out and get somebody, because it feels like every time we get to this moment where Arsenal need that magic moment because they're creating chances, but they don't have a finisher. Martinelli, I mean, how many more chances in games does he need to show that he's not? Yeah. He's not a clinical goal scorer. That's just not him.
He's not confident
He's
right now.
not consistent.
But even if he is confident, he's not consistent enough in front of goal.
Yeah. But Chuck, I think you're making a great point that if there was ever a match that was so glaring at the lack of clinical finishing that Arsenal have in that lack of a number 9 position, this was it. And questions have to be asked, and maybe it's stubbornness from Mikel Arteta. Edu, when he was a sporting director, why in the hell are you spending $100 million on what, the back line, getting an extra defensive midfielder that you don't really need, when you could have put that money to get more than a serviceable striker? I mean, the guy across the way in Newcastle, they paid $80 million for him, $100 million. When you could have had a player like Alexander Isak, why weren't you looking under the radar at a player like that? I mean, this is a club, though, that when you look at outside of the striker situation, what was troubling to me was that Arsenal just did not show up overall. They were second best in just about every single department, and it just had that vibe that Arsenal showed up for.
They outplayed Newcastle.
They did not outplay Newcastle.
They had the ball.
Newcastle took the foot off the gas and absorbed pressure in the last 20 minutes and said, we're going to go to a back 5, back 6. You can ask.
Oh, so when Martinelli hit the post, what was that?
They did not outplay. Is that outplaying a team is stringing however many passes and
they strung enough passes to create opportunities.
They did not outplay Newcastle. Any fan that's watching that, any fan that was at the ground, if they're thinking that their team outplayed them, they're more delusional than maybe Mikel Arteta is saying that the ball was the reason why they didn't get a result in that match.
So the XG of 3 means what?
The XG means that Kai Havertz should have scored that goal. That is why that's way up there. And Martinelli should have scored that. Those 2 chances.
They also had how many set pieces that went over the crossbar.
That's why XG is so deceiving. Yeah. I thought, in terms of just distance covered, in terms of bite, in terms of possession, Declan Rice gave the ball away how many times?
Where did he give it away?
By hitting too many diagonals,
but where?
Forcing it into the channels for Newcastle. I mean, Hall and Tino Livramento, they look solid. They could have taken a cat nap with how easy it was for them in the back line. Newcastle back line, Arsenal played right into their hands time and time again. And
That was
They lack a lot of
Newcastle's
creativity in the front line.
right. That's what it came down to.
Yeah, it was a matter of having an X-factor striker that can actually finish. Clearly, no one in the Arsenal front line is confident. I mean,
'Cause
Martinelli could have had 2 extra touches before he took that shot. I mean, Havertz should have finished that. How many set pieces did they have to put away?
And that played into Newcastle's game plan, right? Because when you say they outplayed them, they didn't. I mean, you could see Arteta was happy in the way that Arsenal played in the middle of the field, but when it came to the attacking third, they were terrible. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's slow. There's not enough movement. It's predictable. Okay, Odegaard gets in the ball, make magic happen, right? And Newcastle's like, go ahead. We have everyone covered. Who are you going to serve the ball to?
Yeah.
Kai Havertz? Go ahead. Keep crossing to him. You know, so in the end, you need somebody who is just going to be a box merchant, someone who's just a savage in the box, who's a great finisher, gets on the end of things, can win the game on his own, and that's what's missing. That's what's going to take Arsenal from being in the race to winning the race.
You guys see this? This is a rundown for the 2-hour show. I'm going to throw it away so we can keep talking Arsenal and Newcastle because, woo, you guys have lots to say. I love it.